Have you ever noticed how the richest people you know aren't obsessed with their salary? They're not constantly asking for raises. They're not job hopping every year for an extra $5,000. They're not even that excited when they do get more money from their job. Meanwhile, everyone else is grinding for promotions, negotiating every dollar, switching companies for a 10% bump, calculating their hourly rate down to the penny. Here's what nobody tells you about rich people and paychecks. They stopped chasing them years ago. Not because they don't need money, but because they figured out something most people never learn. Here at Simple Money, we've analyzed how wealthy people actually build their wealth, and what we've discovered challenges everything you were probably taught about making money. Because the path to real wealth isn't about getting the biggest paycheck. It's about understanding why paychecks are actually the slowest, riskiest, most limited way to build wealth that exists. And once you see what I'm about to show you, you'll never think about your salary the same way again. Here's what's really happening. From the moment you're a kid, you're taught a simple equation. Get good grades, go to college, get a good job, get a good salary. That's success. The entire system is designed to turn you into an employee, someone who trades time for money, someone who depends on a paycheck, someone who measures their worth by their salary. And look, there's nothing wrong with having a job. Most wealthy people started with jobs. I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow and live in a van, but here's the problem. Most people stop there. They think the job is the destination. They think salary growth is wealth building. They think climbing the corporate ladder is how you get rich. It's not. It's a trap. A comfortable, socially acceptable, completely normalized trap that keeps you running on a treadmill forever. Think about it this way. Imagine you're a hamster on a wheel. The faster you run, the faster the wheel spins. You're working incredibly hard. You're making progress relative to the wheel, but you're not actually going anywhere. That's what chasing paychecks is like. You get a raise? Great. Your lifestyle inflates to match it. You get promoted? Awesome. Now you have more stress and more expenses. You switch jobs for more money? Fantastic. But you're still trading time for money. You're still on the wheel. Rich people figured out how to get off the wheel entirely. They realized that real wealth doesn't come from working harder for a bigger paycheck. It comes from building assets that pay you whether you work or not. The paycheck is the starting point, not the end goal. And until you understand that distinction, you'll never build real wealth. You'll just be a very well-paid hamster. Let me explain the first reason rich people don't chase paychecks. I call this the ceiling problem. Here's what it is. Every job has a salary ceiling, a maximum amount you can possibly earn. And that ceiling is usually a lot lower than you think. Let's say you're a software engineer. That's a well-paid job. You might start at $80,000. With experience and skill, you could get to $120,000. Maybe $150,000 if you're really good. If you become a senior engineer at a top company, maybe you hit $200,000. That sounds like a lot of money. And it is. But it's also your ceiling. That's as high as you can go in that role. To earn more, you'd have to become a manager, then a director, then a VP. And at each level, the number of positions shrinks dramatically. There are thousands of software engineers, hundreds of managers, dozens of directors, maybe 5 VPs, and 1 CEO. The pyramid narrows. Your odds get worse. Your ceiling gets closer. And you're competing against thousands of other people for those few spots at the top. But here's what's really limiting about the ceiling. It's not just about the maximum salary. It's about the maximum wealth you can build. If you make $200,000 a year and you're really disciplined, maybe you save $50,000 of that. Over 20 years, with some investment growth, maybe you accumulate $2 million. That's not nothing. That's actually pretty good. But it's also not rich. Not by today's standards. Not enough to retire early. Not enough to give you real freedom. Now, let me show you what happens when you stop chasing paychecks and start building assets. Let's say instead of climbing the corporate ladder, you take that software engineering skill and build a product. A software tool that people pay for. It takes you 2 years and barely makes any money while you're building it. But then, it starts working. It makes $5,000 a month, then $10,000, then $20,000. You're now making $240,000 a year. Same as that VP position. Except there's no ceiling. The product could scale to $50,000 a month. $100,000. More. There's no boss deciding you can't earn more. No ladder to climb. No politics to navigate. And here's the best part. You can sell it. Someone might pay you $3 million for a business making $240,000 a year. That's more wealth than 20 years of saving from a salary in one transaction. That's why rich people don't chase paychecks. Not because paychecks are bad, but because they have a ceiling. And wealthy people are looking for opportunities with no ceiling at all. Every hour you spend climbing a corporate ladder is an hour you're not spending building something that could actually make you rich. And that opportunity cost is massive. The second reason is what I call the time prison. Here's the brutal truth about paychecks. You only get paid when you work. If you stop working, the money stops immediately. That's not wealth. That's a subscription model where you're the product. You're renting yourself to your employer. And the moment you stop paying the rent with your time, you're evicted from your income. Rich people understand that real wealth is about ownership, not rental. It's about building things that pay you whether you show up or not. Let me make this concrete. You have a job that pays you $80,000 a year. That's about $6,600 a month. Sounds great. But what happens if you get sick for 3 months? If you're not working, you're probably not getting paid. Or not getting fully paid. Your income drops or disappears. Your bills don't. What happens if you want to take 6 months off to travel, or spend time with your kids, or recover from burnout? You can't, because your income is completely dependent on you showing up every single day. You're not free. You're trapped. Your time is not your own, and it never will be, as long as your wealth is tied to active work. Now let's look at someone who stopped chasing paychecks and built assets instead. They own a rental property that generates $2,000 a month in profit. They have a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks that generates another $2,000 a month. They have a small online business that brings in $3,000 a month, mostly automated. That's $7,000 a month, and it comes in whether they work or not, whether they're sick or healthy, whether they're on vacation or at home. The money flows regardless. If they want to take a year off, they can. If they want to work on something that doesn't pay immediately, they can. They have freedom, real freedom, because their income isn't tied to their time. This is what rich people figured out. The paycheck is a trap. It feels secure, but it's actually the riskiest form of income there is, because it requires you to constantly trade your time for money. And when you run out of time, or your employer runs out of need for you, the money stops. Assets pay you forever. A paycheck pays you until someone decides it shouldn't. Which would you rather build your life on? The third reason is what I call the single point of failure. This one is about risk, and it's going to flip everything you think you know about financial security on its head. Most people think a stable job is low risk. You know exactly how much you'll make. You know when you'll get paid. You can plan around it. That feels safe. But here's what's actually happening. You're putting 100% of your income eggs in one basket. Your employer's basket. If anything happens to that basket, you're financially destroyed. Your company gets acquired, your department gets eliminated. Your boss doesn't like you. The economy shifts, AI replaces your role. Any of these things, and your income goes to zero. Instantly. That's not low risk, that's incredibly high risk. You just don't feel it because it's not happening right now. Rich people see this clearly. They understand that depending entirely on one source of income is financial suicide. So they don't do it. Instead, they build multiple income streams. They diversify. Not because any single stream is risky, but because depending on one stream is risky. Let me show you what this looks like. You make $80,000 a year from your job. That's it. 100% of your income from one source. Your company announces layoffs. You're gone. Your income drops from $80,000 to zero. How long can you survive? A few months? Maybe a year if you've been really disciplined about saving? Now let's look at someone who stopped chasing paychecks 5 years ago. They make $40,000 from a part-time consulting gig, $20,000 from a rental property, $15,000 from investments, $10,000 from a small online business, and $15,000 from random side projects. That's $100,000 a year. More than the job. But here's the key difference. If they lose the consulting gig, their income drops by 40%. That's bad. But they still have $60,000 coming in from other sources. They're not destroyed. They have time to replace that income. If one rental property has issues, they still have everything else. If their online business has a down year, it barely matters. They're diversified. They're actually secure. Here's what makes this really powerful. When you have multiple income streams, you can take risks with each one. You can try new things. You can walk away from bad situations. Because no single income source controls your life. When you have one paycheck, you're at the mercy of whoever signs it. You can't negotiate hard because you're afraid of losing it. You can't leave a toxic environment because you need the money. You can't take chances because you can't afford to fail. Rich people have options, not because they're braver, but because they built a financial structure where no single point of failure can destroy them. The job feels safe, but it's actually the riskiest possible financial structure. And rich people figured that out long ago. The fourth reason rich people don't chase paychecks is what I call the tax trap. This is where things get really interesting, because the tax system is specifically designed to take more money from people who earn paychecks and less money from people who own assets. Let me explain how this works. When you get a paycheck, the government takes their cut before you even see the money. Federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare. By the time the money hits your account, 30 to 40% might already be gone. You can't deduct much. You can't reduce it significantly. You just pay, because the system is designed to extract maximum tax from employees. But when you own a business, completely different game. You can deduct expenses. You can write off equipment. You can deduct part of your home, your car, your meals, your travel. The list goes on. The money you earn through a business gets taxed after expenses, not before. That's a massive difference. Let me make this concrete with numbers. You make $100,000 from your job. After taxes, you might take home $65,000. You lost $35,000 to taxes. Someone else makes $100,000 through their business, but they have $40,000 in legitimate business expenses. They only pay taxes on $60,000 of income. Their tax bill might be $15,000. They take home $85,000. Same revenue, $20,000 difference in what they actually keep every single year. Over 20 years, that's $400,000. And that's not even the biggest difference. When you own investments, your money grows tax-free until you sell. And when you do sell, you pay capital gains tax, which is lower than income tax. When you receive dividends from stocks you've held for a while, they're taxed at a lower rate than your paycheck. When you own real estate, you can defer taxes indefinitely through strategic moves. The tax system rewards ownership and punishes employment. That's not an accident. That's how it's designed. Rich people aren't evading taxes. They're just playing by a different set of rules. Rules that are available to anyone. But most people never learn about them because they're too busy chasing paychecks. Here's the really frustrating part. The harder you work for your paycheck, the more you get taxed. If you work overtime, that extra money gets taxed at your highest rate. You work more, and a bigger percentage goes to taxes. But if you invest money and it grows, you might pay 15 or 20% in capital gains tax, less than half what you'd pay on earned income. The system literally penalizes hard work and rewards ownership. And most people never realize this. They just keep grinding for bigger paychecks and watching the government take more and more of each raise. Rich people stop playing that game. They move their money into structures that are tax-advantaged, and that's one of the biggest reasons they stay rich. The fifth and final reason is what I call the scalability ceiling. This is about the fundamental math of trading time for money, and why it can never make you truly wealthy. Here's the problem. You only have so many hours. Let's say you work 40 hours a week. That's about 2,000 hours a year. That's your limit. Even if you work 60 hours a week, which is miserable and unsustainable, you're only at 3,000 hours a year. There's a hard cap on how much you can work, which means there's a hard cap on how much you can earn from a paycheck. If you make $50 an hour, your maximum is $150,000 a year at 60 hours a week, and you'll burn out trying to maintain that. Rich people understand this math. They know that trading time for money doesn't scale, so they build things that do scale. A business scales. You hire people. You build systems. You create products. Your income is no longer tied to your personal hours worked. Investments scale. You invest $100,000, it can become $200,000 without you doing anything. You can't work harder and make your salary double itself. But your investments can grow regardless of your effort. Content scales. You create something once, and it can generate income indefinitely. A book, a course, a piece of software, a YouTube channel. You work once, get paid forever. Let me show you the difference with a specific example. You're a consultant. You charge $200 an hour. That's a great rate. If you work 40 billable hours a week, that's $400,000 a year. That's excellent, but you're maxed out. You can't work more hours. There are only so many hours in a week. To earn more, you'd have to raise your rate. But there's a limit to how high you can go before clients stop paying. Now let's say you take that consulting knowledge and create an online course. It costs you 500 hours to create. That's a lot of upfront work for zero immediate pay. Most people would never do this because they're chasing the paycheck. But once it's done, you can sell it for $500. If 1,000 people buy it over the next 5 years, that's $500,000. For 500 hours of work. That's $1,000 per hour of your time. And it doesn't stop there. You can sell it to 5,000 people, 10,000 people. The work is already done. Your income scales without your time scaling. That's why rich people don't chase paychecks. Not because they don't like money, but because paychecks don't scale. And anything that doesn't scale will never make you truly wealthy. You can't work your way to real wealth. You can only build or invest your way there. Now here's what nobody wants to admit. And this is uncomfortable, so bear with me. The reason most people chase paychecks isn't because it's the best strategy, it's because it's the easiest. A paycheck is predictable. It's immediate. It's validated by society. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to take risks. You don't have to learn new skills. You just show up, do what you're told, and money appears in your account. Building wealth through assets is harder. It's uncertain. It requires learning. It requires risk. It requires delayed gratification. It requires you to work without immediate payment. Most people can't handle that discomfort, so they take the easy path. They chase the paycheck, they climb the ladder, they play the safe game, and they stay broke. Or at best, comfortable but never free. Rich people made a different choice. They chose uncertainty over security. They chose delayed gratification over immediate payment. They chose freedom over comfort. Not because they're special, not because they're more talented, but because they understood that the easy path leads to a hard life, and the hard path leads to an easy life. The paycheck is the easy path. You know what you're getting. You know when you're getting it. You don't have to think too hard. But you also never own anything, never build anything, never have freedom. You trade 40 years of your life for the privilege of maybe retiring at 65, if you're lucky. If your company doesn't eliminate your position first, that's not a deal. That's a trap disguised as security. And the sooner you see it for what it is, the sooner you can start building something that actually creates wealth. Let me tell you about Amanda. Amanda is 38 years old. She's a marketing manager at a mid-sized company. She makes $95,000 a year. That's a good salary. She worked hard to get there. She started at $40,000 right out of college. Over 15 years, she got raises. She got promoted. She switched companies twice for better pay. She negotiated hard. She did everything right according to conventional wisdom. And she's proud of that $95,000 salary. It's more than most people make. It's respectable. It's what success looks like. But here's what Amanda's life actually looks like. She wakes up every morning and commutes to an office. She sits in meetings she doesn't care about. She manages projects for products she doesn't own. She answers to 3 different bosses who all have different priorities. She gets 2 weeks of vacation a year. She has to ask permission to take time off. She checks her email on weekends because she's worried about falling behind. Her salary covers her lifestyle, but just barely. The nicer apartment she got after her last raise. The car payment that comes with having a more professional image. The clothes and the gym and the social life that comes with her position. She saves about $5,000 a year. At this rate, she'll have maybe $300,000 in savings by the time she's 60. Plus, whatever Social Security gives her. She'll be able to retire, eventually, if nothing goes wrong. Amanda has been chasing paychecks for 15 years, and she's gotten exactly what that approach delivers. A comfortable prison. A salary that keeps her afloat but never free. A life that looks successful from the outside but feels like a treadmill on the inside. She's not unhappy, but she's not free either. And freedom is what she actually wants. She just doesn't know how to get there while chasing paychecks. Now, let me tell you about Ryan. Ryan is also 38 years old. He also started in marketing right out of college. He also made $40,000 at his first job. But 5 years in, Ryan made a different choice. He realized that his salary would always have a ceiling, that he'd always be trading time for money, that he'd never be free while depending on a paycheck. So he stopped chasing promotions. Instead, he started building. He spent nights and weekends learning how to build marketing systems for small businesses. He took on a few clients on the side. It was exhausting at first, working his day job plus building his own thing. After 2 years, his side business was making $3,000 a month, enough to matter. So he quit his job. Everyone thought he was crazy. He was making $60,000 at his job by then. How could he leave that security? But Ryan understood what others didn't. The salary was the ceiling. His business had no ceiling. For the first year of running his business full-time, he made about $40,000. Less than his old salary. But he was learning, building systems, creating assets. By year 3, he was making $90,000, same as his old salary would have been if he'd stayed and gotten raises. But he owned his time. He could work from anywhere. He could take a month off if he wanted. By year 5, his business was making $200,000 a year. He hired 2 people. The business kept running without him. He was making more than he ever could have as an employee, and he owned it all. Then something interesting happened. Someone offered to buy his business for $600,000. He took the deal. That's more wealth than Amanda will accumulate in her entire career. And Ryan is only 35. He took that money and invested most of it. He started a new, simpler business. He bought some rental properties. Now, at 38, he makes about $120,000 a year from various sources, and none of it requires him to show up to an office. Ryan stopped chasing paychecks at age 27, and by 38, he's financially free. Amanda chased paychecks for 15 years, and she's still stuck on the treadmill. Same starting point, completely different outcome. Here's what most people don't realize. Amanda and Ryan aren't different types of people. Ryan isn't smarter or more talented. He doesn't have some special gift that Amanda lacks. The only difference is what they believed about paychecks. Amanda believed that salary growth equals wealth building, that climbing the ladder is the path to success, that security comes from having a stable job with a good income. Ryan believed that paychecks are a starting point, not an end goal, that real wealth comes from ownership, that security comes from controlling multiple income streams, not depending on one employer. And here's the reframe that changes everything. Your salary is not your wealth. It's just your wealth-building fuel. What matters is what you do with that fuel. Most people use their salary to fund their lifestyle. They spend it as fast as it comes in. Maybe they save a little, but mostly, it just disappears into rent and food and entertainment and stuff. Rich people use their salary differently. They see it as seed money, capital to invest, fuel to build assets that will eventually replace the salary entirely. They live below their means, not because they're cheap, but because they're redirecting that money toward freedom, toward building something they own, toward creating income that doesn't require their time. The paycheck isn't bad, it's just not the goal. It's the tool you use to build the actual goal, which is ownership, assets, multiple income streams, freedom. Once you see it that way, everything changes. You stop optimizing for a bigger salary and start optimizing for building wealth. You stop comparing your income to your peers and start comparing your asset base to your future freedom. You realize that the person making $200,000 but spending it all is poorer than the person making $80,000 and investing $40,000. Because wealth isn't about what you earn, it's about what you own. And you can't own anything while you're chasing paychecks. You can only rent a lifestyle. Let's recap what we've covered. The ceiling problem. Every salary has a maximum. Assets don't. Rich people build uncapped income. The time prison. Paychecks only come when you work. Assets pay whether you work or not. The single point of failure. One income source is incredibly risky. Multiple income streams are actually secure. The tax trap. The system taxes paychecks heavily and assets lightly. Rich people play by different rules. The scalability ceiling. You can't scale your hours, but you can scale your business and your investments. These aren't secret strategies. They're not complicated. They're just a different way of thinking about money and income. Rich people don't chase paychecks because paychecks can't make you rich. They can make you comfortable. They can fund a decent lifestyle. But they can't make you free. Freedom comes from ownership, from building assets, from creating income that doesn't require you to show up and trade time for money. The question isn't whether you should have a job. Most people need to start somewhere. The question is whether you're using that job as a tool to build wealth, or whether you're using it as a substitute for wealth. Are you chasing raises, or are you using your income to build assets? Are you climbing a ladder that has a ceiling, or are you building something with no limits? Because 20 years from now, the person who chased paychecks will have a nice savings account. Maybe, if they were disciplined, if nothing went wrong, if their company didn't eliminate their position. But the person who stopped chasing paychecks and started building assets, they'll have freedom, options, security that doesn't depend on anyone else's decision. That's not luck. That's just a different way of thinking about income, a way that rich people figured out long ago. So here's my question for you. What are you actually chasing? A bigger number on your paycheck, or actual wealth and freedom? Because you can't have both while you're playing the paycheck game.